In this podcast episode, Jessie Inchauspé, known globally as the glucose goddess, shares compelling insights on how a pregnant woman's diet profoundly influences her baby's brain development and long-term health. Addressing common misconceptions, nutritional priorities, emotional struggles of pregnancy, and the societal challenges surrounding food choices, she provides science-backed guidance and personal experiences to empower expectant mothers. The discussion also touches on the impact of glucose balance, pregnancy cravings, miscarriage, postpartum health, and the complex interplay of science and spirituality. Jessie begins by challenging the widespread belief that pregnant women should eat for two and gain as much weight as possible, emphasizing this as a backward and harmful myth. She explains that everything a mother consumes passes directly into the baby's bloodstream due to the placenta acting as a conduit and not a filter. Thus, the quality of the mother's diet directly impacts fetal development. The pressure on pregnant women, amplified by social media and conflicting medical advice, often leads to confusion and guilt. Jessie stresses that this guilt is misplaced because most nutritional problems are a reflection of a broken, processed food-dominated food environment rather than a mother's failings. Central to the conversation is the identification of 4 key nutrients critical for optimal brain and nervous system development in the fetus: choline, glucose, protein, and omega-3 fatty acids. Choline, found primarily in eggs and animal products, is essential for brain cell development. Glucose, a main energy source, must be balanced, not too little and not too much, to prevent harmful effects like excess fat gain and inflammation. Protein is underscored as vital because newborns are about half protein by weight, excluding water, necessitating adequate intake during pregnancy to support tissue growth. Omega-3 fats from fish contribute significantly to brain health. Jessie highlights that optimizing these pillars sets a strong foundation for a child's lifelong health and cognitive potential. Jessie identifies the known toxic substances such as cigarettes, alcohol, and drugs as critical to avoid. However, when it comes to sugar, the recommendation is more nuanced. Pregnancy intensifies sugar cravings due to increased brain reward responses to glucose, which is supported by animal studies. While zero sugar intake is optimal, it is unrealistic and unnecessary to be overly restrictive. Instead, managing sugar intake to minimize blood sugar spikes and crashes is more practical and beneficial. Beyond this, Jessie suggests no other absolute eliminations are needed if the key nutritional pillars are met. A major portion of the discussion revolves around glucose management. Jessie explains that from the second trimester onward, the baby's bloodstream is closely connected to the mother's via the placenta, meaning a mother's blood sugar spikes translate almost directly into fetal blood sugar levels. High maternal glucose can program genes linked to diabetes and increase the likelihood of the child developing metabolic diseases later in life. Furthermore, excessive glucose during pregnancy encourages the fetus to accumulate fat and endure inflammation, potentially predisposing them to lifelong health issues. Jessie cites a study from Oslo University Hospital showing a perfect correlation between maternal and neonatal blood glucose levels at birth. Repeated glucose spikes stress the nervous system, increase systemic inflammation, disrupt deep sleep, and impair emotional regulation, which can cause mood swings and mental health challenges. Jessie speaks from personal experience about how stable blood glucose levels correlate with calmness and mental resilience. The repetitive cycle of spikes and crashes creates chronic bodily stress, leaving less capacity to manage external pressures. Managing blood sugar is therefore crucial, not just for physical health, but for emotional and neurological wellness. Addressing the addictive nature of modern processed foods, Jessie asserts that addiction to sugary and processed foods is not a simple matter of willpower. The food environment, often a food desert for many, combined with aggressive marketing and availability of cheap, unhealthy options, traps people in unhealthy habits. Jessie advocates for small, manageable dietary changes, 0 to 1 steps, that can gradually help people regain control over their nutrition without overwhelming them. Personalized diet hacks, like drinking sugary drinks after meals rather than on an empty stomach, can reduce harmful blood sugar spikes and help break addictive cycles. The episode explores why pregnancy cravings are intense and often for unusual food combinations. Jessie mentions that cravings for pickles may relate to the body's need for iodine, which supports thyroid and brain development. Cravings are viewed as the body signaling nutritional needs, although the preference for sugary fruits and snacks is complicated by modern food breeding that enhances sugar content. She encourages whole fruit as a reasonable source of sweetness and recommends combining fruit with protein or healthy fats to minimize glucose spikes. Jessie shares her personal experience with a silent miscarriage, revealing the profound emotional toll and isolation such losses cause. The grief was compounded by societal silence around pregnancy loss, although many close to her had experienced it in silence. Her journey through grief involved therapy, support systems, and navigating anxiety during a subsequent pregnancy. Jessie emphasizes the rarity of open discussion on miscarriage and postpartum emotional challenges, underscoring the complex mental and emotional dynamics surrounding pregnancy. Continuing on postpartum challenges, Jessie highlights how the depletion of key nutrients such as choline, omega-3s, and protein during pregnancy can contribute to postpartum difficulties, including depression and exhaustion. The stress of hormonal changes, sleep deprivation, and identity shifts compound these effects. She encourages continued focus on nutrition after delivery to support recovery and emotional well-being, while acknowledging the broader scope of postpartum mental health challenges that require multifaceted support. Jessie speaks openly about integrating spirituality with her scientific understanding. She sees no conflict between the two, believing that intuition and spiritual connection complement her empirical work. Her miscarriage prompted her to connect spiritually with her future children for support and meaning, an experience she describes as comforting and real. This blend of science and spirituality helps her process emotional experiences and deepens her work's impact. The conversation touches on recent changes to the food pyramid in the U.S., which now recommend reducing carbohydrate intake and increasing consumption of animal proteins, fruits, and vegetables. Jessie welcomes this shift, aligning it with her glucose-focused approach, but remains cautiously optimistic about how the food industry will interpret or exploit these guidelines. She hopes school meals and public awareness will reflect these improvements to help combat the epidemic of processed foods. Jessie identifies two major lies pregnant women face: that they need to eat for two, and that the baby will automatically get everything it needs regardless of the mother's diet. The reality is the baby takes whatever is in the mother's bloodstream, whether beneficial or harmful. This underscores the vital importance of maternal nutrition and reframes pregnancy from passive incubation, oven, to an active nurturing role, soil, where the mother's diet fertilizes the baby's growth. The podcast explains the emerging science of epigenetics, molecular switches on DNA that regulate gene expression without changing the genetic code itself. Maternal nutrition and glucose levels influence which genes are activated or silenced in the fetus, thereby shaping lifelong vulnerability or resilience to diseases like diabetes. This programming highlights pregnancy as a critical window where early dietary interventions can have profound and lasting effects. Jessie clarifies that while some people thrive on few carbs and the body can produce glucose internally through protein conversion, most people do well with about 100 grams of carbs per day, approximately 2 cups of rice. She differentiates between starches, preferred sources of glucose, and sugars, which include fructose and are less ideal. She stresses the importance of protein amounts based on body weight, especially during pregnancy and breastfeeding, to maintain maternal health and support fetal and infant development. The discussion includes practical glucose hacks such as avoiding sweets on an empty stomach, eating protein-rich breakfasts, and combining sweets with fats or protein to stabilize blood sugar responses. Jessie shares stories about personal struggles with sugar addiction and how adjusting meal timing and composition helped reduce intense cravings and mood swings linked to blood sugar instability. Jessie reflects on the transformative power of motherhood, describing it as a complex blend of challenge, joy, and spiritual growth. Her 3 guiding truths: having a savory breakfast, listening to one's body, and eating plenty of eggs during pregnancy reflect simple, actionable wisdom born from her experience. She defines greatness today as achieving peace and contentment, a state she finds deepened through motherhood and personal growth. The conversation briefly acknowledges the broader societal factors influencing health, particularly the role of multinational corporations in shaping food environments. Jessie highlights how these commercial determinants often undermine public health by prioritizing profit over nutrition, addiction prevention, and informed choice, complicating efforts to improve dietary habits at the individual level.